Good afternoon. I am Dr. Nasinga K. Burton, and I would like to welcome you to the Burton Wires and Black Press USA's live stream with Alexis Davis Smith of Precise Communications. Welcome and happy Friday, everyone. We are going to be talking. Welcome, Alexis.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Nasinga K. Burton. I'm excited to be here. Great way to kick off my weekend. Yes.
Yes, thank you. And Alexis and I are very good friends, so we will be probably very casual, or more so casual than we would normally be in other settings. So you're going to really get a conversation today. And the reason I invited Alexis onto my show today is because she is the founder and now president and CEO of Precise Communications, which is a multicultural marketing and communications firm with offices in Atlanta and in Miami. And I'm an entrepreneur too. I have the Burton Wire Media Group, and this broadcast is part of it. But Alexis, I'm always in awe of you because you seem to manage so many different things, and you have such amazing clients. And you employ so many dynamic, diverse, and multicultural people. So when I think of you and I think of DEI work, I always think of not only do you do it for your clients, but you also do it in your real life. Can you talk a little bit about why you started Precise Communications, which is celebrating 25 years this year, right? Is it 25 years this year?
It's 21 years.
Yes,
thank you for that. But don't age me.
Yes.
I just turned 50, so I'm staying in the 50 lane right now. But we just celebrated 21 years. And, I started Precise after spending 7 years with Ketchum Public Relations, which is one of the top 10 PR firms in the world. And I will tell you that my time there was one that I will always appreciate because it really helped to prepare me to go out here and run my own agency. And I'll be honest with you, Nasinga, and I've said this before, when I started Precise 21 years ago, I just really thought, I'm gonna go out here, I'm a freelance, I'm gonna do some consulting work. I did not think that 21 years later, I would have a team of full-time staff and a team in Miami and, an office in downtown Atlanta and clients across the country and, affiliates in 7 markets. So I really started Precise because I got a little burnt out on agency life and kind of the bureaucracy of it. But I loved PR and I loved the profession. But what I loved the most during my time at Ketchum was really the work that I did in the multicultural space for African Americans and Hispanic consumers. And during my time there, what I realized was that these were 2 audiences, which clearly I'm a part of, that were often overlooked by big consumer brands and companies. And they really were missing a tremendous opportunity to tap into the trillions of dollars in buying power that we offer. And the fact that, we outspend, most consumers in many, many product categories, as well as we set the trends. And so that was a little kind of frustrating for me. And the fact from a business perspective and then offering counsel that was often not received, and then recognizing that corporate America had not grasped on to that opportunity yet. But also for me, it started becoming like a personal mission and a passion. So it was a great way for me to combine, what I do every day in my professional life, but also as a way to get back. So, when I work with my clients, yes, we are definitely executing marketing and public relations campaigns and programs, but I always try to find ways for them to give back to the community, whether it's scholarships, whether it's, sports events for young people. I'm always looking for ways for companies to show that they appreciate the African American and Hispanic dollar, because we are much more judgmental and scrutinizing. We saw last year after the Black Lives Matter movement of how companies, give back to our communities and how they treat us as people and consumers. So that's kind of how, it started and grew.
Okay, so what were your influences? Like, how did you take the step? Like, it's a lot to have a job at a major PR firm, like top 10 international PR firm. And,
right.
But, what was it that propelled you? I know you said that you talked about some of the things that kind of gave you reason to think about entrepreneurship? And what was it that made you take that first step and to just break and to go into business for yourself?
Well, to be honest with you, there were some things that happened within the company. There were just some changes that had been bought by a larger holding company. And I felt that, it was getting away from the culture that I had grown to love and appreciate. And it's so funny because, God sometimes show you signs, and Oprah talks about how, he might throw a pebble at you. And then when you don't get it, he'll throw something else at you. And then finally he'll throw a brick at you.
Yes.
And finally a brick was thrown at me that said, you know what, it's time to move on. And like I said, I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do, but I took the time. I talked to my mother and my father, both who were entrepreneurs, and they both just said, Alexis, you've done your time there. You've learned from the best. Why can't you go out here and do it on your own? Take what you learn and make money for yourself and do it
Mm-hmm.
the way that you want to do it. And so that's what I've always said, is that I wanted to run an agency based on what I believe and work on programs and with companies and brands that I believe in and truly support. And so we don't take every single opportunity that comes our way. So the biggest influences was, again, just recognizing that it was time to move on to the next thing. But it was my parents. My mom is a journalist by trade, Black newspaper in NPA, Philadelphia Tribune, which I
All
also
right.
interned with for 2 years. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a great appreciation for NNPA, and they gave me college scholarships. So anytime you want me for anything, NNPA, call me. So my mom was a journalist and a PR consultant, mainly working with faith-based organizations. So I grew up reviewing news releases and proofing newsletters and going to events with her, and helping her pick out the best photos for the newsletters and watching her work with reporters. So it was really in my blood. And then my father owned a couple of businesses in Philadelphia, including a grocery store and a dry cleaners. So entrepreneurship is in my blood. My grandmother on my mother's side owned a dress shop like in the 50s. Like, what Black woman was running a dress shop in the
Mm-hmm.
50s?
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, on both sides, I think it was meant for me to be an entrepreneur. And once I left, Ketchum, and I sent out a letter to my entire network and said, hey, I'm starting Precise Communications. We're going to do this and that and the other. My first phone call was from Coca-Cola. Will
Oh,
you
wow.
work on Super Bowl 34, which was here in Atlanta? And I literally looked up at the sky because, I talk to God like this. And I was like, thank you. And so I knew that was confirming that I made the right decision. And while, entrepreneur has its ebbs and its flows, its peaks and its valleys, I have never looked back and I have never regretted the decision. So
Fantastic. All right. So tell me about, for people, so tell us a little bit about, for people who are just meeting you.
mhm.
What did you study in school? Where did you go to school? Oh, Lord, the Rattlers. Where did you go look, I was like, oh, wow, it's about to be bleeding green and orange. But yeah, where did you go to school? How did you decide that that field was for you?
Okay. So I went to Florida A&M, and yes, I am a fanatic. They say we're fanatics about our school. FAMU Rattlers, we're fanatics. So I say I'm a fanatic.
Mhm.
Proud, proud, proud Rattler. I studied journalism with an emphasis on public relations.
Okay.
And honestly, even that, everything in my life has just been more like seize the moment type situations. Like, I'm
Mhm.
very strategic and very methodical, but I realized the most important decisions I have made in my life have really been about just capturing that moment in time and stepping into it and stepping out on faith.
Mhm.
Because when I arrived at FAMU, I said, I'm going to study psychology. I want to be a child psychologist. You probably don't even know that. And we had to declare our major freshman year, which I think is a little weird. But then I thought about, if I'm going to be a psychologist, I'm going to have to go to school another 4 years. How am I going to make money?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I changed my major. I had to go talk to the dean of the journalism school. And I talked to him about my mom. And, I thought that studying public relations was the right thing.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so that's kind of how I came to that decision, because I realized that I loved writing and being creative, but I was always fascinated by the business world. Like
Mm-hmm.
even to this day, like my favorite TV shows are things that are about business and cutthroat business. And I love to see, women that are CEOs and bosses. Like I saw myself there. And I definitely think that I made the right decision, because clearly I never went back to school for psychology, and I probably wouldn't have been a great psychologist because I probably would have been crying every time a kid left me. So.
That's probably true.
Yes. Yes.
But you do use psychology and some of that in what you do, right? Marketing and communications, and you have to have your finger on the pulse of this. And why I love you and so many other people who are now getting kind of their recognition or shine, because people are now paying attention to these issues that you have been studying and working on. There's whole bodies of literature, work, research on
Right.
multiculturalism and diversity and equity and inclusion. But I love that
Absolutely.
people have been committed to it for so long are finally getting their roses. Tell me about some of your work in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, just tell me about some of your work in that area, and then we'll get into kind of like the issues around it.
Okay. So, I want to go back to what you just alluded in terms of people just getting their roses. And, last year was an extreme wake up call. To me, it was fascinating and a little encouraging, but with a little bit of skepticism. But I was so happy to see the international kind of uprising and social protests for Black Lives Matter, long overdue, clearly. But what I was not expecting was the ripple effect that it had on corporate America, because what it did was it inspired employees of color, particularly those that are African American, here in the United States, or those that are from, of African descent, to really speak up to their companies that were making Black Lives Matter statements, but saying, hey, you're saying you're going to do all this, but I don't even feel comfortable coming to work. Or, I've been experiencing different kind of microaggressions, or I've been overlooked for opportunities to advance. And so I'm happy that companies decided to pause and recognize, okay, we're talking to our external audiences, but listen, we have to talk to our internal audience, our employees as well. And so I will tell you that, last year when all of that happened, I probably did more interviews and webinars than I've ever done in my life, because it was like, we're finally waking up, like corporate America is woke. That's still questionable. Okay. You've been sleeping for a long time. Some people are still asleep. Some companies are still asleep. But the work that we have been doing since that time has really been a lot about how to, make sure that the employees that you have feel like they're coming to work in a safe space and a culture that is truly committed and manifest what you say your DEI, platforms are. That people do really come to work feeling included, that they come feeling that they have the same opportunities as their, white counterparts to advance, to management positions, all the way to the C-suite. So, with one of our clients, we've been very active with them and working with one of their employee resource groups. And, we did everything from helping them shape, what were the things that they wanted from senior leadership and how to say that and how to present that. And then also helping them shape different kind of conversations that included all colleagues of color, so that they could come together and hear some of the issues and challenges that their African American colleagues were dealing with, but also giving them an opportunity to ask questions and figure out how to be allies. Because you did have a lot of white people and Asian people and all these other people say, I want to be an ally. Like, oh my God, I had no idea you were experiencing that. How can I help? So you had some people that were really sincere and genuine. So that's been a lot of the work that we've been doing, just in terms of counseling them on, how to communicate to the C-suite to get your requests, making sure that your requests have metrics. If you want people to advance, what is that percentage of African Americans that you want to see move up to the C-suite? What does that look like? What's the year that you're going to give them? Put a timeline on it. And then how do you get people to understand what Black people feel? Is you do have to have conversations. So, we've made recommendations on things like programs, conversations, speaker series, but also really leveraging internal communications and trying to find platforms to help their Black employees shine a little bit more because they tend to be overlooked. So how can we showcase them on social? How can we make them speakers? How can we just, give them a little bit more visibility so that people can see, you know, African Americans are helping this company grow and move forward, and they're a integral part of the fabric. So that's a little bit about the DEI work.
Okay. So in your two decades of work
Mhm.
at Precise, what client, I mean, I don't know if you want to say a name, I would love for you to,
Uh-huh.
um, as a campaign, or what campaign have you worked on that you felt really stands
Mm,
above the rest in terms of really connecting with multicultural audiences?
mm. That's a very good question. I will say the DEI work that I just referred to, I won't say the client, I'm really proud of the work that we've done with that because we've
Mhm.
seen a difference. We've really seen a difference in the company. But in terms of multicultural marketing communications, Coca-Cola was our first client, our longest standing client. We worked with them for 15 years. And Coke honestly has been the leader in the multicultural marketing space. Like they were the first ones to have, a Black woman in an ad, or Black people in an ad, and,
Mhm.
things like that. And so I'm proud of a lot of those campaigns as well. I love the work that we've been doing with Toyota. Toyota's been our client now for almost 8 years, and now we have Lexus too.
Mhm.
Um, our work with Toyota, I would say I'm probably the most proud of that. And I can't think of one specific campaign. Oh, yes, I can. I can think, but I'm going to think broader. When we first started working with Toyota and we had a deep dive session with them, they told us about how much money they give to the African American community, how many partnerships they have with like UNCF, National Urban League, Rainbow Push, all these things, how many scholarships they've given, this HBCU program that they've had teaching kids about the college students about the environment, how they lead in the African American community. It was like the number one automaker. They told us all this stuff, and Tracy on my team and I are looking at each other and looking at the clients like, Black people don't know this. They
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
know this. And so, because in our community, because Ford really helped build, the middle class, but Black middle class, especially in the Midwest, people have been hearing about Ford for years, but they had not heard what Toyota was doing. And so, it was our mission in charge to elevate those messages and to strengthen the relationships that Toyota had between media, influencers, and consumers. And so I will say, the portfolio of our work that we've done for Toyota, I'm extremely proud of, including, helping journalists understand that Toyota is very committed to preserving history and celebrating American history. And they know and recognize that American history includes Black history. So, you've been on one of our tours. We've taken journalists on tours. So on historic spots, historic Black spots up in, on the East Coast and through the South. And we've ended at, the Smithsonian DC, which Toyota's a founding sponsor of. We also went to the museum in Mississippi. And so those one-on-one kind of opportunities with reporters was a great opportunity or to share what Toyota has done in the long-term commitment. So that's just one thing, but I would say Toyota, or just our whole portfolio of work with Toyota, I'm very, very proud of. Coca-Cola too. Coca-Cola too,
Mhm.
but people knew who and what Coke is. So it was a little
Mhm.
bit different, but with Toyota, I can see we've moved the needle on that work. So I would say that.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So take us through a typical entrepreneurship is not for the faint of the heart. I'll just
Right.
say that. So take us through like a particular day, a specific day in the life of Alexis. Like, what does it look like?
Oh boy. Um, people ask that all the time, and there's really no typical day.
Right, right.
Um, lately, but I'm gonna tell you, the last 2 weeks, a typical day is me on Zoom calls for 5 hours. That's been my typical days, and it's driving me bananas. But I'm like, that's how I make my money. So a typical day always starts with coffee.
Right.
And I'm drinking home coffee today, and you know how I am about that. I didn't have a
Yes.
chance to run out. But anyway, my day always starts with coffee. I usually start my mornings by responding and answering emails
Mhm.
first and foremost. And then I usually spend, like I said, 3 to 4 hours on conference calls, either with my team and or my clients. So
Okay.
I have structured my week. So I'm going to answer your question a little bit broader. I've structured my week a little bit differently so that I can have a little bit of sanity and manage all the work that I need to do. So Mondays and Fridays, all I focus on is running the business. So
Mhm.
those are the days that I meet with my team every Monday. I have one-off meetings with them. I manage our finances. I see where we are, with, invoices, what's outstanding. I have our conversations with, our bookkeeping team. I do all of that stuff. I spend time with my operations manager to make sure everything that she's doing is aligned with our needs and all of that. And then on Friday, I pretty much do the same thing. And I also focus on like agency marketing and, getting awards off and things like
Mhm.
that. So doing things like this. Then Tuesday through Thursday is nothing but client business. And so I usually spend the days conference calls with the team, reviewing materials. Because we are a small firm and we've been here 21 years, I recognize, one, we are smaller than all the big dogs in Ketchum and Edelman. And then two, we're Black owned. So, there's always a perception that you're constantly fighting against. So I try to make sure that everything goes out the door is high quality work. I will compare our work to the Ketchums and the Edelmans and the Porter Novellis and say that we stand up right along with them, if not better than some, at certain points. So I make sure that everything that goes out externally, I lay my eyes on news releases, graphics, anything. I make sure I see it before it goes out. So that's how I pretty much spend Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And, I would say for the most part, my average is between 8 to 10 hours. And then, there's times when we're working on new business proposals where it
Yes.
might be a 12 or 16-hour day. And you know that because I might text you in the middle of the night, say, I'm still working on this and I'm very cranky, but I'm gonna get it done. And you always get it done. So that's kind of how my week and my days flows. It's a lot of phone calls, a lot of reading, and managing a team. Because when you run a business, as you know, as an entrepreneur, you wear a lot of hats. So I'm the president, I'm the CEO, I'm the CFO. Some days I'm an account supervisor. Some days I'm like a little errand girl. I got to run out to Office Supplies and Office Depot, even though I have an assistant who will do that. But sometimes I just do it myself. But you wear a lot of hats, so it's just a lot going on all the time.
Yeah, as Amanda just said that we both look great, and Amanda is one of my former students and currently works for Alexis. So thank you, Amanda. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm referring to. She'll be like, why did you go to Office Depot? You should have called me. I'm supposed to go to Office Depot. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. So,
So how do
and
you do
thank
it?
you, Amanda.
Yes, Amanda's
Yes,
amazing. How do you? That's what the A is for. Amazing. But
absolutely.
how do you? And Ice Chocolate says awesome. How do you? I don't know who Ice Chocolate is, but thank you.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
either.
how do you kind of take your hands off? Because it's really hard when you
Mm,
are building something yourself and when you have that vision and you sacrifice so much to get it done. It's hard to kind of let go, especially as you're
hmm
building your team. I've had that struggle myself.
hmm
You're building your team to let go and let other people kind of take the baton and run with it. How do you manage that?
hmm I'm not going to lie. That's been a challenge.
Uh-huh.
I still deal with that to a certain degree
Mhm.
because part of it is I've been doing this so long, so I can do it faster.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I want things done and I want it done immediately. So I will jump in and do it because I know I can get it done faster. Fast isn't always good though.
Mhm.
But sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So you got to balance that. And I write a note to myself to slow down because I do things so fast.
Mhm.
But the only way you're ever going to really feel comfortable letting go of the reins is to have a team of people that you trust. And I will say, I think I'm much better at it now than I have been in the past, because I truly do have a team that I can trust. I have amazing VPs. One of my VPs runs a major account for us. Um, and I just check in with her. I'm not really involved in it. When she needs me to look at something, I do. Like I said, I look at most things that go out, but she was running that account day to day. I recently hired a new account supervisor who is amazing. He's only been with us 3 weeks, and he's been running these accounts like he's been with us 3 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
so honestly, he called me today and was like, I need your feedback. Okay. But he's been truly running it. And so I've been able to let go and trust, because I know that these people are going to get things done and they're going to provide good counsel. So I don't need to be involved as much as I was anymore. And I'm so grateful. I don't have to be on every single call. I don't have to write every single thing. I don't, and people have to feel like you trust them. So for me, it's like, if I'm going to do all the work, then why do I have a team? And then for them, it's like, well, if you're going to do the work, then why do you have me? So it's reciprocal. So you do have to trust them. And you also have to recognize that, and this was the biggest challenge for me.
Mm-hmm.
They may not do it the way that I do it, but that doesn't mean it's wrong.
That's right.
As long as they deliver, as long as it's quality, as long as it's strategic and it's meeting the client's needs, that's the most important thing. And more often than not, clients going to give you feedback. It's rare that you hand them something. They're like, it's perfect. Great. Yay. That just doesn't happen. So you have to trust that, they are giving, the kind of quality service that we are known for. And I do recognize that, when I do need to jump in and I need to provide senior counsel, because I am older than everybody, I've been working longer than everybody, then I do that. But if they have it and they run with it, they do. Amanda that you just referred to, I'll ask her about something and she'll be like, oh yeah, I already did that. But she doesn't feel the need to tell me every single, Alexis, I did, da, 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 da. And then I'll think about it maybe like a week later, go, did you do? She's like, yeah, I did that. And I do trust her to do it. But most of the time I'm asking her just for my own knowledge, because I've already moved on, and then I circle back,
Yeah.
So the key to your answer, long-winded answer, my long-winded answer is having people that you can trust. But also, as an entrepreneur, you got to recognize that your business is your baby. And like you have Kai, nobody's going to love your baby like you do.
That's right.
But if you can get people to embrace what you're doing and embrace your vision and to understand what you're trying to achieve, and you make them a part of it and they feel a part of it, then they'll give you, their all. And I tell my team all the time, I don't want them to feel like they're my employees. I want them to feel like they're colleagues. And I do talk to them about a lot of things. I treat them like they're partners. When we have new business opportunities, sometimes I immediately want to say no, but I'll ask them. I'm like, okay, guys, we have this coming up. Do y'all want to work on it? And sometimes they'll say yes when I really want to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But if they tell me they want to work on it and they're going to give their all, then we'll pursue it. Okay. So I really try to engage them.
Okay, well, you have a fan in Ice Chocolate who thinks you should be teaching, who loves your strength, who wants to loop this video because you're giving such great tips, all of these wonderful things.
Thank you, Ice Chocolate, whoever you are.
Yeah, we need a name. Right. So let's talk about COVID and how that has impacted businesses in general, entrepreneurs in general. And for those who don't know, African-American women are the largest group of entrepreneurs in the country per capita currently. So it's something that our community has been doing forever for all kinds of reasons. But like at this particular moment, we are balling, to say the least. We are getting it out there. We're getting it done. Right. We're making it happen. We're bringing home the bacon. But then, you get hit with something major, right? And it can be a global pandemic, right? And people knew and didn't really do anything about it for too long. And now we're, going into year 2 of this. But tell me, how has COVID impacted the entrepreneurial kind of landscape? And what in particular did you do with your business to respond to how it impacted entrepreneurs?
Right. I have to say, in the beginning, like every other company, big or small, none of us knew what we were doing. So we had like 4 to 6 weeks where we were basically still. We did not have any thing major going on because even our clients were standing still and they didn't know what to do. So I will say it, like I said, for 4 to 6 weeks, things were just nothing. And I told my team, hey guys, when we start getting busy again, we're going to be busy. So enjoy this time. And, fortunately, our business was strong enough that no one on my team had to take a pay cut. Nobody got fired. We made it through. Things were definitely slow. And I think that as an entrepreneur, you have to understand, like I said, there's going to be peaks and valleys. You're going to have seasons where you are winning and things are going very, very well and you are making money, like crazy. And then there's going to be times where things are a little bit slow. So, for us, I'm grateful that during the slow period, I'll be honest, I took advantage of the PPP and EIDL, and I'm so happy that that was a great thing that our previous administration approved, because that definitely did help, during, kind of that slow period. But I will say what was most important to me during the COVID time as a business owner was thinking about, okay, how do we bounce back?
Right.
Maintaining communications with our clients to let them know when it's time, to get to work. We're here, we're ready, we're thinking. And so we maintain communication with them. It was also important to me to try to maintain a sense of camaraderie among my team, because my team, we're like family. We have a really good time together. We laugh, we talk. So, we did a few virtual happy hours. I made sure, when birthdays and, anniversaries, job anniversaries came up, that, the things that we used to do, we still did. So they would get balloons at their house. I still wanted them to know that we appreciated them. So that was important to me, so that when it was time to get busy again, they would be ready to go. And I will say, fortunately for me, while, last year was slow, this year is gangbusters. We have so many clients and projects that are going on right now. I literally have to write a list and put it in front of me because I forget. It's so much. We're probably having one of our best years ever. So, you just have to recognize as an entrepreneur that will happen, but you also have to be ready to pivot if necessary. So, we made sure that our clients knew, in addition to our expertise in multicultural marketing, that we were ready to provide D&I advice. And we had been doing that kind of work. So we had to play that up a little bit more. So definitely did that and offered those services to our clients. And so we're starting to see, more work in that area that I imagine we'll continue to do. And that will be probably, as strong of a service area as our traditional kind of proactive fund multicultural work that we do.
Okay. So have you been working on any of those like kind of COVID education programs or anything vaccine related in terms of what's happening with COVID? Have you been brought in for that by any of the pharmaceutical? I know you don't want to talk about specifically clients, but have you had any campaigns that have helped get the word out about COVID-19 prevention and awareness?
Well, one thing that we did in the height of it was to help promote a PSA that Toyota had created with celebrities. It had like Cedric the Entertainer, Dondre Whitfield, and a couple of other people in it. And we did some work to help promote that PSA, which had all the messages about washing your hands and and things like that. We did provide some counsel to our clients on how to keep their employees engaged. But in terms of education related, we're actually working on something right now, which I won't reveal, but we're working on something right now that was supposed to just be a health program, but because of the variant is now slanting a little bit more towards COVID and tying the two together. So there's
Okay.
something on the way.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so for people who are thinking about cutting the cord, so to speak, I don't know if that's the proper term, or pivoting out of corporate America or out of education or out of the government or many other entities, what advice would you give them? Like, what should they be doing if you had like a top three kind of best practices or things to consider if you're thinking about making the move to entrepreneurship?
Number one, stack your money.
Ah,
Stack your money. One thing I would have done a little bit differently, I kind of say that hesitantly because I believe I'm on the path that I'm supposed to be on. But one thing I think I would have done a little bit differently is stay in corporate a little bit longer just to make sure that I stacked my retirement, plans and things like that. And, could get a, greater pension and all of that. I do wish I would have done that. I miss those big corporate bonuses that people are always telling me about. I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. But, every once in a while I can give myself one, but it's probably not like theirs. But, how much money that is going to vary. But I would say make sure in order for you to live, if you can stack 3 to 6 months of your own living, because when you first start a business, you are going to be using your own money. So fortunately, when I started my company, I had been saving money to buy a BMW. So I had this BMW fund. So I didn't do it. So I took that money to start Precise. I don't even remember how much money I had saved. So I did that to do everything. And because here's the other thing. It is much more challenging for Black entrepreneurs to get loans, to get grants, to, anything. It's much more challenging. And so a lot of us are self-funding our own businesses. So that's how I would say, first and foremost, stack your money, make sure that you're going to be secure when you're first starting off and for slow periods. So even if you start making crazy money, put some money in savings, just don't spend it all. So that's first and foremost. The other thing is to think about your network and how strong your network is, because that's going to be key to you getting your first real piece of business or your first sale or whatever. You need to have a strong network that will ultimately support you. Like I said, my first phone call came from Coca-Cola, and that was because of the work that I had done on a couple of projects for them while I was at Ketchum. I had someone that was in the company for me, and he was a huge cheerleader. So when I sent out my letter to him, he literally took it and copied it and passed it around to the entire PR department at Coca-Cola. And that's how I got the phone call. So have a network that you can reach out to. And then 2, make sure that you truly have studied the craft or the business or the product in the industry so that you really know your stuff. When you come out, you need to make sure that you are offering something that is different. And if you have a widget, if it's a remote control, you created this new remote control, there's 1,000 different remote controls, but why is your remote control different? Why how is it going to change someone's life? How is it going to make their life easier? What's the solution? Whatever you come out with, it needs to provide some kind of solution to make somebody's life a little bit easier, a little bit better. So I would say make sure that you study your industry, study your competitors, figure out your competitive advantage, and then make sure that you're clearly marketing yourself and showcasing what those competitive advantages are.
Yeah, and a part of that, those are all great points, Alexis. And part of that is by writing a business plan, which I think is a step that a lot of people skip over. But if you actually put together a business plan, you'll answer all of those important questions and have to come up with those considerations, outside of what can you yourself afford to pay for while you're going out and going after that business. But if you write a business plan, I think it also will lay out, like I know for my business plan, I didn't panic when I hadn't made any money. Because my financial projections were like, you ain't gonna make no money for a long time.
Okay, right.
So you got to be able to self-sustain, right? But when you do that business plan and you do your financial projections, and I would also say, I know I'm interviewing you, but I'm just gonna add this in.
That's okay. I love that.
Yeah, that is also a good idea to actually bring in a consultant, maybe you have a friend,
Absolutely.
maybe you do some trade, who can really walk you through things that you may not think about, or you should think about, and who can help you. Like, I didn't really know how to do financial projections. I didn't. And I had a friend who was a business person who had been an entrepreneur, who sat down with me and helped me do the projections.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the data that I did have available.
Right.
So I would also encourage people to do that. Like, you don't have to know everything, and it can be daunting.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you sit down and say, "Hey, I'm going to start a business," some people will go out there and just do it and learn, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
bump their heads and keep going and doing whatever.
Right.
Other people, need a plan, and I think that's a very good advice from you, about having a plan, because that's essentially what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said about a business plan, because I will admit to you, I didn't do a business plan when I first started.
Mhm.
I just kind of wrote down and said, hey, I'm going to do this. Blah, blah, blah. But over the years, I've learned, how to do that, because what it does is it provides that formula to all the things I just said and what you just said, and puts it on paper. And then it keeps you accountable. It keeps you realistic, but it's also helps you to set your goals so that okay, if I'm not getting here, then, maybe I need to up my game. Maybe I need to do something a little bit different. So I do think that it's definitely a great kind of blueprint and baseline to continue to move forward. And so I completely agree with you. And then one other thing I want to say is recognize what you do know and
Yes.
recognize what you don't know, and get the help for what you don't know. Because let me tell you something. I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, I do PR. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an HR person. So I make sure that I've hired those people. And when you're first starting, you don't want to spend money on that stuff, because it seems like, oh my God, I can't afford it. But I will tell you that it will cost you more to not have those people. I have the greatest bookkeeping team that I've now been working with for 3 years. I wish I would have had them the entire 21 years. They have been a game changer for me. You
Mm.
have to understand the legal ins and outs, of a business. If you're going to hire people, you got to understand HR, have a consultant who can help you figure out all of those things. I had an issue where, I had to let an employee go for your first time. I had to consult an employee lawyer or a labor lawyer to how to handle that particular situation. And so again, recognize what you do know, recognize what you don't know, invest in having the right team of consultants to support you. It is a big, big, big difference. And then also find someone who can, who has perhaps taken these steps before you, who may share in the same industry as you. It's been incredibly helpful to me to have other um, relationships with agency owners, independent agency owners that I can call and talk to, and share experiences, ask them questions about
Yeah.
current salaries, billing rates, all of that, frustrations. How are you handling doing all this stuff? Do you sometimes feel overwhelmed? Well, how are you keeping employees engaged during COVID? Definitely try to find someone that you can talk to, that you can learn from and share with.
Okay, so what are some, and those are fantastic tips. Thank you so much. What are some of the ways, because you're a boss, and I think when you run your own business, and even our technical producer Norman, who's you can't see on screen right now, has been
Mhm,
an entrepreneur forever, for a long time.
mhm,
You get so not only protected over the business, but like, if you don't work, you don't eat, right? You can't feed your
mhm,
employees, your
right.
freelancers, your consultants.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
what do you do? Like, self-care is a huge thing now. I think that
mhm.
movement has been led by Black women. It has
Yes.
been picked up by most women, I hope, and a
Mhm.
lot of people in general. But what are the ways, like, how do you find time to kind of like decompress, to break away? What do you like to do when you have spare time? Like, how do you make time for you?
Right. And I have to tell you, I have to make myself do that. I have to be intentional about it, because to me, like, just getting a good night's sleep or a power nap is self-care. And that's fine, but you know what? That's mandatory. That's a requirement. So for me, I make sure that I spend time with friends. I'm definitely a fan of cocktails. And a fan of eating out and ordering in. But also recently, I really said, because during COVID, at the beginning of COVID, everybody's like, I'm going to work out, I'm going to organize my house, I'm going to do all these things. I said all that. I didn't do none of that, none of it. But now I told myself, Alexis, you have to carve out time for yourself, just like you do for your clients and your family. So,
Right.
because for me, it's either my business or my family. So I had to carve out time for me. So now I'm taking a Pilates class that I love. And the reason that I like Pilates is because it's slow, um, definitely challenging, but you're breathing and you're thinking about how you're breathing. So you have to be in the moment. And so that's one thing. I had a friend that reminded me that I love the outdoors. So, I've started, identifying different trails in Atlanta that I'll just go walk on a Saturday morning when it's not unbearably hot. That makes me feel good. I have a masseuse come to my house once a month. Like,
Ooh, I
I'm
need to do
like,
that.
I'm like, I love that. I deserve that, and it feels wonderful and it does relax your mind. So I think about stuff like that and spas. I'm a big fan of spas and I love to travel. COVID has, put a kibosh on that, but loving, to travel and particularly be near water or, in the mountains. I really do love being outdoors, even though I don't seem like an outdoors chick. I do love being outdoors. So those are just some of the ways. It's small. I think sometimes people think everything has to be big with self-care, but it's not. It's just like slowing down, taking moments for yourself and doing things that clear your mind. And so, because my mind is always racing, like I barely sleep well because my mind is racing or I'm dreaming or I'm thinking about something or whatever, but trying to find things where you can stop and have a woosah moment. So for me, massages do that. Like I said, walking outdoors on a trail somewhere pretty. Pilates does that for me. Those are the things that I think is like, for me, the best methods to kind of center me.
Okay. And what about your network? Because you talked about that earlier about having a
Mm-hmm.
good network before you got in business. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in terms of growing your business and meeting like-minded people who can
Mm-hmm.
also be not only, because I think we always think about mentors, which is what you talked about as well,
Right.
finding
Yes.
that person. And I think we both can agree mentors don't always have to be you. It doesn't have to be a Black woman. It doesn't have to be a Black person. It doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
a straight person. It can be someone, in many walks of life who can help you grow and get better in your business. But what about that personal piece? Like when you are trying to have that work-life balance, you know, are most of your friends like you? Are some people like you meet their friends, you're like, how are y'all friends? Or whatever. You're like, how did this happen? What? Who is this person? Like, how do your network of friends, how do you meet them, or how do you have them in your work-life balance when you are an
Mm,
entrepreneur? Because you have to make time for that, your personal life too, right? Not just the personal care,
mhm,
not just the business, not just your family that you're blood related to, but also that the
mhm.
family that you choose.
Yeah.
Do you have any pointers on that either? I mean, do you
Yes.
have pointers on that period?
Yes. And I will say this, I always say the most important things to me in my life are faith, family, and my friends. And that's true. But sometimes you say things and then you don't act on it. What you show isn't the same thing.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, my friends are so important to me. So, so, so important to me. And in many ways are grounding to me and definitely bring a greater life balance. But I will say before COVID and maybe a year or so before, I used to travel a lot for my job. I was traveling a lot for my job. And then also my father, who recently passed away like a year ago, who was in Philadelphia. So I was gone a lot. So between working and traveling, by the time I got back to Atlanta, I wouldn't want to do anything. So I would
Mhm.
say no a lot. Somebody's told me I say no a lot. I would say no a lot. And it wasn't because I didn't want to see them or hang out with them. It's just because I was physically tired.
Mhm.
And what I've told myself and what I've recognized is when I'm with my friends, it's actually fuel. It
Mhm.
gives me energy. So now I make sure that I take that time, even if I feel like I have a pressing deadline, and normally on a Sunday where I would spend the whole day working, like now I'm like, no, stop doing that. Like go over to your friend's house and hang out by her pool. Go grab a bite, with your best friend and her 5-year-old daughter who makes you laugh. So those things, those things definitely bring me balance. And I will say I've had to tell myself to carve out time to do it. And I think I'm better at it now than I probably have been in the past. And I'll tell you, COVID has a lot to do with that. Because before I was like, no, no, no. Now you call me and ask me if I want to do something, for the most part, I'm going to say yes. Because I got so tired of being in the house, and I am an introvert. I can be extrovert because of what I do and all of that, but my soul is truly an introvert. So it's easy for me to stay in the house. Like that does not bother me at all. But now somebody says, "You want to come over? Want to go to dinner? Want to go to drinks? Want to?" Yes, 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 yes. So I think that that's important. And then in terms of the type of the friends that I have, I think this is so important, and Will talks about this. You have to have a circle of friends that support you and motivate you. And so I have quite a few friends who are entrepreneurs. And while we all are in different spaces in what we do, we have that connection. And so we can support each other. We can have a good time being casual, but then throw out, this happened to work this week and blah, blah, blah. And then, the other person said, well, yeah, I've experienced that too. And this is how I handled it. And, that makes you feel good that you can have that conversation over social. So I have a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs. I have quite a few friends that are in marketing. So even if we're all hanging out, we might talk about the last, Coca-Cola campaign that came out, or the last Pepsi campaign, or somebody made a bad PR statement like the baby and why it was horrible. And, and then that makes work fun, that makes it a little fun. So I do think that friends are important, and you have to carve out time. Those things that you say are most important to you, your life should reflect that. And that's what I'm trying to be much better at. Because I say faith, family, and friends, but yeah, I'm grinding. You would think it would be precise.
Absolutely. So you just mentioned the baby, and I wanted to ask, how is your field changing? Like, how has this kind of moment, because I feel like we're in people say we're in a racial reckoning for sure. I also think the Me Too movement has been very effective. And even when you think about the fall of Cosby and R. Kelly and others, I think that the landscape is shifting, right? In terms of what tolerate Cuomo. I mean, he was America's favorite person at this time last year.
Absolutely.
Right. They were saying he was going to be the next president. After Biden is going to be Cuomo, right? He was, destined for whatever he wanted. Not to say he won't bounce back from this, but he had to step down, and a lot of that happens because of the shift in our values, a shift in how we treat people, particularly people who are historically disenfranchised, and kind of what that looks like and how it plays out in social media and the public. Can you talk a little bit about how that's changing and how you've had to kind of adjust to that in counseling your clients?
Absolutely. So, and you just alluded to it, the biggest change in influence in terms of the communications profession really has been the advent of social media, because now you can share information much more quickly than you ever have before. Information goes out like wildfire, whether it's accurate or not. People believe what they read. Very, very few stop and do research. We've seen that a lot with in the last couple of years in terms of American politics. That's been the biggest part. So I will say what's been interesting and where we've really had to pivot and really help our clients, particularly those that have been in the business as long as we have. I was like, we're kind of dinosaurs now. And we still have to show our value because everything really truly is digital. And so before, when we would rely on like a Today Show or a 60 Minutes or a USA Today to really deliver our messages and to drive visibility for our clients and our campaigns, now it's really about social. Everything is right here, and so now we do rely on, social media platforms to deliver our news. Now that is our news source, more so than television. So we're looking at how do we engage with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and Pinterest and all of these things. So that's huge. And then also recognizing the power of social media influencers, whether they're macro or micro in terms of the number of followers that they have. People believe the influencers that they follow. And so they have more power than most media outlets do. People are going to believe when, they see Maddie James, who is a popular, African-American lifestyle blogger. If she comes out and says, she bought this washing machine, that's going to be more powerful than, you see a report on washing machines on, 60 Minutes or something. People are going to believe that. So that has really been the biggest part of how we approach public relations, and how that has changed is we used to really focus on earned media, traditional media coverage, but now a lot of it is paid and a lot of it is social. And so that's been the biggest pivot, which I think is fun because there's more opportunities to reach people than we've ever had before. It's 80, I think it's eight, what was it, 85,000 or 850,000 podcasts out there now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
850,000 podcasts.
Almost a million. Yes.
Yeah. So, that's more opportunities to share your news. We didn't have that before. And millions of social media influence. We didn't have that before. So there's more opportunity. So that's the most exciting part about it.
Okay. We have 5 minutes left. So I'll ask you a good question. This will be a fun question. I have not seen any questions in the comments. But I know that you are what I call a stealth cinephile. You follow a pop cultural sponge, like for real. Yes. So, and you follow things very, very specifically. I'll say that. Yes. So, what are you watching right now? Look, I'm gonna treat you like Jay-Z. What are you watching?
What am I watching right now? Yeah. I just watched on Netflix. It's an old series, but a friend made me aware of it, called Startup. Again, I love business stuff.
Yes.
3 seasons of Startup. I've watched that probably over the last 3 weeks. I've watched that. What else have I watched consistently? Listen, every morning I wake up to the Today Show. Everybody knows that about me. I love Al Roker. So literally in the morning before I even open my eyes, I turn the remote on, I say NBC. And then I start hearing Al Roker and, everybody on that show. So I always watch that. I watch Startup. What else have I watched? Because I feel like we're in a hiatus. So I don't feel like it's a lot of good TV on right now because we're in a hiatus. I do love $1 Million Listing. I'm a real estate and interior design freak. So I love watching those shows because it just gives me ideas, most of which I can't afford, but it gives me hope for the future.
Do you have any shows that you would recommend for people who are interested? I mean, what about Shark Tank, who are interested in entrepreneurship? Is there anything that you've really seen and really liked that you thought was reflective?
I do love Shark Tank. I love Damon John. I think he gives wonderful advice. I do like Shark Tank. And again, I like a lot of like just business type shows like Billions. Yes. Because I think there's little nuggets that you can get out of it. Matter of fact, Damon John was on one of the episodes and the guy called him in to invest. And Damon John said something like, "Oh, so you want me to be like your black face?" And he talked about how he was not going to be used for that. And he said, when you have the big deals that you offer, to Bill Gates, those are the ones I want you to talk to me about. So I just think those shows always have little nuggets and lessons that you can learn from. But I'm sorry, I'm not answering that question well. But I just think it's because it's a hiatus. So I can't even think of what I watch regularly.
Okay. No, that's fine. Okay. So is there anything else I haven't asked you that you want to offer as we wrap up?
I'm just going to say, if you want to be an entrepreneur or you are an entrepreneur, just make sure it's something that you're passionate about, because the road is not always easy, and it's definitely not easy when you are a person of color. So try to make it that is something that you love to do, and that it's personally rewarding and fulfilling.
Fantastic. Well, I would like to thank you, Alexis Davis Smith of Precise Communications. How can people follow you on social media? What are your handles?
So we have a few. You can follow me directly on Twitter and Instagram. I am Precisely Alexis. And my company on IG and Twitter is Precise Com, COMMATL.
All right.
And
All
we're
right.
also
Well,
on Facebook and LinkedIn, just as Precise Communications.
all
So.
right, fantastic. Well, thank you again for joining us and sharing your journey as an entrepreneur. I'm sure people learned a lot. I mean, based on our comments, they absolutely did. And I thank everyone who joined us and who was watching and who will be watching as you go throughout your day. But make sure you tune in going forward, because next week and the week after that, we will have other entrepreneurs in different fields who will also be talking to you about their careers and about making that shift. So without further ado, have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, wear a mask, wash your hands, hand sanitizer, and stay in your pod. I am Nasinga Burton, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.